Let's cut to the chase. My goal with this video is to create the most comprehensive video guide out there for losing body fat and getting shredded whilst preserving muscle mass. These are all the topics I'm going to cover, and I will also include scientific studies and articles in the description of this video to back up what I say. And I'm also not going to try to sell you any bullshit products. This is strictly informative. Sounds good? Well then, let's get to it. So before we get into the more specific bits, let's quickly cover how fat loss occurs. Burning body fat is achieved by eating in a calorie deficit. A calorie deficit is when you're eating less calories than what your body burns throughout the day. This means that there are two ways of losing body fat. One, lowering your daily calorie intake by consuming less calories throughout the day, and two, increasing your activity throughout the day, since this will make you burn more calories. Usually eating less calories is the easiest variable to change, but both serve a purpose in a successful fat loss phase. And that's literally it. Losing fat is actually pretty straightforward, but since our goal is to preserve muscle mass as well, we have to be a bit more strategic about our approach. Setting calories. In order to figure out your specific calorie deficit, we need to first figure out your calorie maintenance, which is the amount of calories you need to eat daily to stay at your current body weight. There is a few formulas and calculations you can use to estimate your maintenance calories. Generally, the more information the calorie calculator needs, the more accurate it is. I'll leave a link to a calorie calculator that I've found the most accurate in the description. Keep in mind that this is only an estimation. Most likely it won't be 100% accurate, so you have to spend some time testing and adjusting accordingly. And once you figure out your calorie maintenance, then we can remove a certain amount to achieve a calorie deficit. Removing 10 to 25% of your maintenance calories creates a good calorie deficit. Start eating in the 10 to 15% calorie deficit range. Then, as the cut goes on, you're going to progressively increase the deficit to roughly 20 to 25% over time. Many people recommend a calorie deficit of roughly 500 calories, and although this isn't inherently bad advice, we should use a percentage since this takes our individual calories into consideration. So let's use a practical example. Let's say that your calorie maintenance is 2,500 calories. Then you're going to subtract 15% of those calories, and then you're going to get yourself a calorie deficit, which in this case is going to be 2,125 calories. To track your calories, I recommend myfitnesspal, which is a phone app and a website. Macro distribution. Your calorie intake will be made up by macronutrients, which are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. I mean, alcohol is technically a macronutrient, but hopefully I don't need to explain to you why your calorie intake shouldn't mainly consist of alcohol. So let's just cross that one out. So let's start with protein. Generally, an intake of 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilo of body weight is recommended within the scientific field of muscle growth. The amount of lean body weight, aka muscle mass, you hold will dictate how much you should eat within that recommended protein intake range. But there is actually a few reasons why even a higher protein intake than what is recommended can be beneficial in some cases when cutting. Reason number one, protein is generally the most satiating macronutrient, so by eating a bit more protein, it can make you feel fuller. Reason number two, protein has the biggest thermic effect out of all the macronutrients, which basically means that you burn a few more calories digesting proteins compared to carbs and fats. And reason three, when you eat in a calorie deficit, some of the protein will be utilized by your body for energy. So to make up for that extra loss of protein, including a bit more protein in your diet can be beneficial from a muscle prevention aspect. But by saying all that though, this is really just overcomplicating things. You'll probably do just fine by eating twice your body weight in kilograms or converting what you weigh in pounds into grams. Carbs and fat. Carbs and fat can be distributed more towards personal preference since they don't matter as much in terms of body composition. They're still important though, since carbohydrates is our body's preferred energy source and fats is essential for our brain and hormones to function properly. 15 to 25% of your calories should come from fats. If you're not sure if you prefer a lower or higher fat diet, just start with 20% of your calories coming from fats. But no matter how much fatty you choose to eat, make sure to not go lower than 0.5 grams of fat per kilo of body weight, since this is the lowest recommendation for fat intake. And since we figured out the protein intake and fat intake, the remainder of the calories will now come from carbohydrates. So for demonstration purposes, we're now on my phone. We're going to go on to myfitnesspal, create an account if you haven't, but once you're on there, you're going to go to the right corner and you're going to find goals, and then you're going to press on the calorie, carbs, protein and fat goals. Now we can change our calories to what we figured out previously, which is going to be 2,125 calories. And then we're going to change our protein. So let's say that we weigh 154 pounds or 70 kilos. Then we're going to just convert our body weight from pounds to grams. And that gives us 154 grams of protein. And you can only figure out your protein on this app using percentages, since I don't have the paid version. So we're just going to use the percentage that gets us closest to that. So now we've established that 30% of our calories will come from protein. Then we're going to find our fats, which we talked about was going to be 20%. And then I just have to decrease my carbs to 50%. And then we finally got our total macros, which is going to be 2,125 calories, 266 grams of carbs, 159 grams of protein, and 57 grams of fats. Micronutrients. Micronutrients consist of vitamins and minerals. We won't go too in depth on these since they have little to no impact on body composition, but just make sure to have a few servings of fruit and vegetables throughout the day and eat a lot of whole grain foods. Vitamin supplementation can be used if you lack a certain vitamin such as vitamin D3 or B12, but a general multivitamin, in my opinion, is overhyped, since if you just spend a few more bucks a month on vegetables and other nutrient-dense foods, then you won't have to buy a $30 supplement tub. Plus, eating more greens and such fills you up more since it's very low in calories, which is definitely a plus when cutting. So I guess mom was right all along. Eat your veggies. Meal frequency matters a bit. Generally, eating fewer meals throughout the day also makes one less hungry throughout the day, which can make the diet easier to stick to if hunger is an issue. But the problem with eating few meals such as 1 or 2 is that it can have a negative impact on muscle protein synthesis, which is one of the many things that impacts muscle growth. So because of that, I wouldn't necessarily recommend to eat only 1 or 2 meals throughout the day. General science-based recommendations is to eat 3 to 6 meals a day. I would go towards the lower end of this range when cutting, since as I said, eating less meals helps with satiety and then impacts adherence. So eating 4 meals a day would be my personal sweet spot during a cutting phase. Meal timing. Studies are mixed on the importance of meal timing. For simplicity's sake, distribute protein evenly throughout the day to keep muscle protein synthesis levels elevated. Prioritize eating carbs around training to ensure that glycogen storages are full for the best performance and recovery. And fats doesn't really matter at all since it doesn't have any direct impact on training performance or recovery. Refeed days. Refeed days. Beat 'em up, beat 'em up, beat 'em up. Refeed days are days during a fat loss phase where you bump your calories back up to maintenance in the form of carbohydrates, and they serve the purpose of avoiding negative side effects that can come with a prolonged calorie deficit, such as muscle loss and decreased hormone levels like testosterone and leptin. The current science shows that doing a single day refeed doesn't really serve a lot of benefits. Mostly it's just psychological ones, since it's mentally relaxing to take a break from eating in a calorie deficit. But a few studies has been done on 48-hour refeeds, which is 2 days if you for some reason didn't know that, which has shown more benefits compared to only 1 day. One study found that the group who did 2 consecutive refeed days after every 5th day of eating in a deficit was able to preserve more muscle mass and lose equally as much body fat compared to the group that ate in a calorie deficit every day throughout the weeks. And both groups also ate in the same weekly deficit. So how exactly do we implement refeed days? Well, it kind of depends, but a general rule is that for every 5 days of eating in a calorie deficit, spend 2 days of eating at your calorie maintenance by increasing your carbs. And on top of the previous benefits I just mentioned, this will also increase your performance in the gym. A weight loss of 0.5 to 1.5% of your current body weight a week should be your goal. This ensures that you're losing fat in a good weight without compromising muscle loss and other side effects that you can get from dropping the weight too fast. In the beginning, you can expect to lose weight a lot faster, usually in a rate of 1 to 2% of your current body weight a week, since when you suddenly drop your calories a significant amount, your body will hold less water and glycogen. So expect your weight to drop in a slower rate when getting further further into a cut. When this happens, don't panic and reduce calories even further since you aren't seeing a drastic reduction in the following weeks. How long your fat loss phase should last depends entirely on how much body weight you plan on dropping and the size of your calorie deficit. If you want it to be completely accurate, we could calculate this by figuring out your weekly calorie deficit by multiplying your daily deficit by 7. And since we know that there's roughly 3,500 calories in 1 pound of body fat, we can estimate how long it will take to lose a certain amount of body fat. But honestly, this is just overcomplicating things a shit ton, and it's only really necessary for athletes competing. So scratch that and just make sure to lose weight in a rate we spoke about and set yourself a goal body weight or a deadline for when you're done with the cutting phase. So strength training is obviously important for preserving muscle mass. Training for the most part should stay the same. If you're going to be in a large calorie deficit over a long period of time, training volume probably should be reduced. This could be done by doing a few less weekly sets for every muscle group than what you are currently doing. And the reason why you might have to reduce training volume is because eating in a calorie deficit will eventually impede your ability to recover from your strength training sessions. And if you're just going to ignore that by training as hard and as much as you can easily come into an overtrained state where you're increasing your chances of injury and stagnation. So generally, cardio is good for cardiovascular health and longevity, but can also be implemented during a cutting phase so that you can eat more calories and continue to lose weight. A common myth is that cardio burns muscle. It in fact does not, but it can interfere with your recovery if you do too much and go too hard, which can further impact your lifting sessions. But as long as you keep cardio in moderation, it won't have any negative impact on lifting sessions and can actually improve them, since you're going to increase your cardiovascular health, which can help you do more volume before getting tired. And also, no, fasted cardio doesn't burn more fat over the course of the day. Do whatever you prefer and make it stick to your schedule. How much cardio you should start with and add throughout your weeks of dieting mostly comes down to your preference. If you struggle with eating not as much when cutting and you don't mind spending some time doing cardio, then implement more. And if you don't really enjoy cardio, then you can just as fine eat a bit less. So personally, I would recommend to stick to 1 to 4 list cardio sessions a week and 0 to 2 HIIT cardio sessions a week. Doing a lot more than this can potentially impede recovery and impact lifting sessions. It's important to have balance in order to sustain a diet. Don't force yourself to eat rice, chicken, and broccoli throughout the day if you don't like it. Hopefully, most of us know by now that it doesn't really matter what types of food you eat, but rather what contains in the foods that you eat. So having a clear and meaningful goal is ultimately what is going to get you to adhere to your diet on the days that you feel like slacking. So yeah, just make sure to have a clear goal once you start your cutting phase so that it means a lot to you, so that the days that you think about cheating, you remind yourself of why this means a lot to you. Keep yourself busy. Often when we think we're hungry, we actually aren't. We're just bored and start to think of food, which makes us crave it, so we end up eating some shit. I'm sure we've all had those busy days when we didn't feel as hungry as we typically do, since our mind was busy thinking about work or something else. So basically, sitting around and thinking about food or watching food videos is the dumbest thing you can do. So remember, stay busy or you're going to take a quickie. Wait, that kind of sounded wrong. Whatever. Does caffeine suppress your appetite? You've probably heard some folks say that caffeine can help suppress our appetite, and some people saying that it doesn't. This because of the conflicting evidence out there. Some studies have shown zero effect, and some has noticed that insignificant effect, which probably doesn't lead to differences in the real world. So for sure, consume caffeine for their stimulant benefits, but don't think it's going to help you significantly in regards to suppressing your appetite. Does fat burners work? Most fat burners are complete scams. There are a few fat burners out there that can have a tiny indirect effect on fat loss, since they can help with suppressing your appetite. But for the most part, I wouldn't recommend buying fat burners, since the difference they make is none too minuscule and they are pretty overpriced, so yeah, just save your money. Does intermittent fasting work? Well, yes, just like any other new fancy diet that comes along, as long as you're eating in a calorie deficit, you will burn body fat. But intermittent fasting can actually help with adherence, since meal frequency is reduced since you have a smaller time window to eat your meals, which makes it easier to sustain a low calorie diet. For that reason, I would recommend it for people struggling with adhering to their diet, but not the best option for preserving muscle mass, since muscle protein synthesis won't stay fully elevated throughout the day. Should I expect strength loss? Well, actually, no. As long as you're doing it properly and not getting crazy shredded, you definitely don't have to expect strength loss. In some cases, you can even gain strength depending on your experience level and the amount of calorie deficit that you're sticking to. So don't go into a cutting phase thinking that you're going to lose strength, because placebo is a very real thing. How do I get out of a weight loss plateau? Assuming that you haven't crashed your hormone levels by doing a crazy deficit, simply reduce the calories roughly by 5%, or you can also just burn more calories in the form of cardio or just daily activities. What should I do if I binge eat? Most people who don't have an important event coming up, such as a photo shoot or a competition, should just continue eating as planned. People who binge on their diet usually do so because they're following a too strict diet plan. So in some cases, it would be even worse for them to punish themselves by eating even lower calories the following day. So if you binge, don't change anything and rather figure out what made you binge in the first place so that you can prevent it from happening in the future. How do I target that last bit of stubborn belly fat? Well, you can't actually reduce belly fat or other specific areas on your body. Eat in a calorie deficit and you lose fat everywhere over time. What determines where you will lose fat first and last is often determined by genetics and gender factors. For example, males, they typically store the last bit of fat around their waist, and for females, they typically store their last bit of fat around their hips and thighs. Should I only train abs while cutting down? No, just like any other muscle group consisting of slow and fast twitch muscle fibers, they need to be hit with a sufficient stimulus in order to grow. Train them during your gaining phase so that they get bigger, and train them during your cutting phase to maintain the muscle mass. Focus on progressively getting stronger with exercises that allows it, and not just perform high rep bodyweight crunches. What about supplements though? No supplements are necessary whatsoever. However, some I generally recommend that has a solid scientific backing would be protein powder because of its conveniency, creatine for its performance benefits, caffeine for its stimulant benefits, and citrulline malate or L-citrulline since it improves blood flow and has potential performance benefits. Is tracking calories even necessary for losing weight? Not at all. Losing weight can still occur just the same way if you don't track calories. The calorie deficit is there no matter what, it's just if you are aware of it or not. For the general population, this video is probably way too complicated, and you can just tell them to eat smaller portions, include more greens, and make sure to have a good quality protein source during each meal. I just like everything to be accurate and optimal since I'm a complete psychopath, you know. How long did it take for you to create this video? Well, let's just say that my throat is sore as hell right now. Okay, that sounded kind of wrong. You know what I meant. Yeah, I meant that it took a while to make this video. So please like, support, share, subscribe, you know, whatever. But anyways, on a more serious note though, I know that there's a lot of teenagers watching this video, and for most of you, I do not recommend cutting. Only if you're like obese, or if you just generally feel like shit looking at yourself in the mirror. But for most of you, just do a slow and steady lean bulk while focusing on building muscle and minimizing fat gain. And if you're going to cut, make sure to not do it too drastically so that you f up your hormones, which is definitely not what you want to do when you're in puberty. Putting that aside though, this video took so long to make, and there were still many topics that I didn't get to cover in this video. And I also want to say thank you a lot for 5k subscribers. This really motivates me to just step up my game, as you hopefully can tell. Yeah, I'll probably do a Q&A, so if you haven't followed me on Instagram, make sure to follow my Instagram. It's up on screen right now. Probably going to ask you to send me questions or like on the story, you know, as a poll. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been Magnus Bulkan. If you liked it, please like the video, and yeah, please share it if you have someone you know that want to cut but you want to make sure to help them out and do it properly, you know. So yeah, like the video if you liked the video, but if you didn't like the video, dislike it and tell me in the comment section below what I can do to improve. Thank you for watching. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Hope so. But anyways, peace.